Hey guys, I'm Janet, on occasion, and today we're playing another campaign lore play. One of the interlude ones, so there'll be no conquering today. But we're going to be talking about the, magic, basically. The colleges of magic and the 8 laws of magic that are practiced in the Empire. So we're going to start by talking about, sort of magic in general, and then wizards in general. And then probably in the next episode, actually, we'll talk about, specific colleges. Because believe it or not, there's a heck of a lot to just being a wizard in general. No matter what kind of wizard you are. So in this episode, I'm mainly going to be reading from I think it's a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th edition Warhammer rulebook, which is Arcane Magic. It's the Magic supplement, the rules for Magic, and also a couple of 3rd edition Warhammer fancy role-playing books, the Winds of Magic and the Tome of Mysteries. So, I thought I'd credit them now, and we can sort of get to it. So, let's get to it. The High Mages of Ulthuan, the great island of the Elven Kingdoms, teach that there are not one, but 2 realities. The first is the commonplace world we all live in. The world of tangible things, living creatures and plants, water and rocks and air. Things made of material substance. Coexisting with our solid familiar world is a completely different reality, a world whose fabric consists of raw power. It too has its landscape and its living creatures, but their forms are fashioned from solid energy. This second world, the great unseen domain that coexists with the material world, is the source of all magic. It provides wizards with the power for their conjurations. It imbues magic weapons and other enchanted items with their potency, and its energies course through supernatural creatures such as ghosts and the undead. Warhammer Magic is concerned with one particular aspect of magic. Warhammer Magic being, this chapter. Warhammer Magic is concerned with one particular aspect of magic on the battlefield, or battle magic as it is commonly called. There are many other kinds of magic practiced by wizards of all ranks, from the unlicensed wandering hedge wizards of the old world to the high elf mages of Ulthuan. Some learn medical magic to cure disease and heal wounds, others use magic as a means of fortune-telling and divination, and their advice is sought and paid for by people before they make an important decision or financial commitment. Some specialise in book lore, uncovering and discovering spells, recording them and so adding to the knowledge of magic. A few are masters of illusions and stagecraft, whose ghostly visions and terrifying apparitions grace many a playhouse or carnival. Even farmers are careful to chant the right spells and make the right sacrifices when it is the season to plant seeds or harvest crops, and the skill of no few surpasses mere superstition. From the tawdry showman to the dusty academic, magic is part of life in the Warhammer world, and its practitioners can vary in appearance from ragged fortune-tellers to venerable high priests. Battle magic is the preserve of battle wizards, who are trained to use devastating battle magic spells. Not all wizards have the right temperament or skill to become battle wizard, as the energies involved are tremendous and far beyond the capacity for most wizards to control. In fact, battle wizards are so rare and so valuable that there is an institution in Altdorf exclusively devoted to their education and training. This is the world-renowned Colleges of Magic, where the majority of battle wizards in the old world are trained. The Colleges of Magic play a pivotal role in all matters concerning magic in the Old World. Beyond the Old World lie the Elven Kingdoms, the land of Ulthuan, realm of the High Elves, and the sinister realm of Nagaroth, where the Dark Elves dwell. Both of these elven kindreds are well versed in the ancient lore of magic, the High Elves in the lofty high magic of Ulthuan, and the Dark Elves in evil dark sorcery. Elves and men are not the only races of the Old World that practice magic. Other races have their sorcery too, although this often takes quite a different form. Orc and goblin shamans learn the magic of Gork and Mork, and gods of the green-skinned races. The gods of the green-skinned races. Shamans have a natural ability to use magic, a talent they are born with and which they must learn to control or die. Their magic is totally different to that of elves and men. Skaven too have magic that is darkly individual. Skaven magic is used by the caste known as the Warlocks, and by the mightiest Skaven of all, the Great Greyseers. Their spells are conjured in the name of the Horned Rat, god of the Skaven race and lord and father of all rat men. The followers of Chaos also have their special magic, gifts granted by their masters, the inscrutable gods of Chaos. There are the 4 great gods of Chaos: Khorne, Tzeentch, Slaanesh, and Nurgle. But of these, only the last 3 grant spells to their followers. Khorne may gift his followers with magic swords and other weapons of great potency, but never with spells, for Khorne is the god of battle, whose followers are mighty warriors, rather than distant sorcerers. Where magic enters the world, its energy is dense and black, and blows strongly. The very landscape is warped and made mad. This magical energy is often described as a wind, flowing and churning across the landscape. As it billows southwards, the magical power splits into many distinct winds and begins to dissipate. Even in the old world, far from the chaos wastes, the winds are barely tameable. They flow across the land as their nature dictates, leaving nothing untouched. They are everywhere and within everything, but unseen and largely unfelt by normal man. Human wizards can see many winds, though they may only manipulate one. This is fundamental to imperial magical theory. Many have tried to master more than one wind, but that way lies a dangerous and prescribed path. The winds billow and settle in the places attuned to their nature, and wizards often seek out places steeped in their own wind of magic to increase the power at their disposal. The winds of magic are often described in terms of colours, though these are not real colours and these winds are not real winds. Colour is just a metaphor for the strange, unreal appearance of the winds of magic, an appearance that can be barely described in the mundane languages of man. These metaphors are necessary to allow wizards to communicate with other wizards, and to give non-wizards a means to discuss the arcane arts. Like a lot of the nomenclature of magic, the words in our language can only scratch the surface of truth. They are empty placeholders where real meaning cannot be conveyed. To approach the truth of magic through language, one must learn one of the ancient tongues, like the arcane language referred to as Magick. That's with a K on the end, by the way. Hish, Shamon, Gyron, Azir, Ulgu, Shayish, Ashki, and Gur are the names of the winds in the arcane tongue. Can't be totally sure about pronunciation on those because I don't speak arcane tongue, but you know. The superiority of the Teclisian technique. The roots of modern imperial magic can be found in the teachings of the high elf archmage Teclis. His words have shaped the imperial colleges of magic for the past 200 years. Magic has been a fact of life in the old world since even before Sigmar. It has always been treated with a mixture of fear and awe. Those rare individuals who have found they can perceive and manipulate the winds of magic have been outcasts, yet have only been also been a necessary part of society. They have been venerated and loved, and hunted down and murdered, according to the political climate and the mood of the people. But despite what the tales of ancient wizards might tell, the magic of long ago was a petty, ignorant thing, barely gleaning the possible. During the Great War against Chaos, the magical power that Magnus the Pious could unite behind him. All the greatest wizards from across the Empire and the Old World was a pathetic shadow of the forces they faced. The Empire almost fell to its knees, and it was clear that more ammunition was needed in the fight against such a powerful foe. The Empire had a history of condemning magic use and putting an end to many spellcasters as dangerous followers of chaos, and it almost paid for such purges with its very survival. However, at the height of the Great War, Teclis arrived and convinced Magnus that magic could indeed be used against chaos, and so save the Empire. Teclis offered to school human wizards in elven techniques, and teach them secrets of magic that they had never even dreamt of. Magnus accepted gratefully, and the power of imperial wizardry did indeed leap forward enough to defeat the enemy. But even this was a double-edged sword. In the act of freeing the Empire from its terrible foe, Teclis imprisoned its wizards in a much more subtle jail. It was thought at the time that Teclis was imparting the magic of the elves. The human wizards thought they might become as powerful as the great elven mages, and Teclis, it is said, encouraged such beliefs. It was not until later, until the humans had begun to master the colour magic they had learned, that some realised they had not been told the whole story. Teclis had deliberately withheld fundamental truths. The humans of the Empire could indeed see the separate colours of magic. They could differentiate between winds, and therefore take a single wind, isolate it, and manipulate it. And thus they could tap greater power than they had ever imagined before. But true elven magic includes manipulating more than one wind, mixing them together, combining them, taking the powers of one wind and adding it to that of another to form even greater magic, taking a weakness of one wind and cancelling that with the strength of another. However, that law was denied to the humans. Teclis taught them to manipulate one wind and one wind only. He claimed that humans could never master more than one wind. They simply did not have the talent. And so, committed to Teclisian technique, the human wizards were bound to his restrictions. They could only gaze westwards towards Ulthuan and imagine a great artist painting lifelike figures in rainbow colours, while they were stuck with a single hue upon their bare palette. Over the years, many humans have attempted to conjure with more than one wind. I myself have investigated such possibility in a purely academic manner, condoned by the masters of my college, of course. Many have had to admit defeat. Some have been driven mad by the effort, or worse, some may have even succeeded. And yeah, just to point out, this particular book is written in the first person. It's a, it's a guy lecturing essentially. So when I said that I have, I've attempted to conjure more than one wind of magic, I don't mean me. I mean the guy who's the narrator of the book, I guess. You know what I mean? It doesn't say who it's supposed to be anywhere, as far as I can tell. But yeah, so not me, him, or her. I don't know, someone, a wizard. So anyway, the elves present themselves as the highest authority on magic in the entire world, and I talk here of the high elves of Ulthuan. Those we call wood elves are magically little more sophisticated than our own jade wizards. The high elves look down upon the colleges of Altdorf with some disdain. I have met such elves. They have helped us in the past, it is true, at our time of greatest need. But in doing so, I am sure they were very careful that we were helping them more. But Ulthuan is where we must inevitably look for greatness in magic. There are many aspects of elven practice that we must strive towards. Perhaps due to the machinations of Teclis, we are doomed to stumble along this path forever frustrated. Perhaps there is a path from such darkness into the white light. The magic of the elves, given shape through the controlled reunification of the winds, is able to produce spectacularly powerful effects. Teclis himself says in The Founding of the Eight Orders, Ulthuan is a magical artifice, a spell so utterly powerful that it keeps the world turning. This is undoubtedly exaggeration, but even so, I am led to believe that the magic of the elves does indeed keep the world in balance and the pervading distortion of chaos itself in check. How this is so, one can only speculate. It's possible we should even be grateful to the High Elves for this fact. Perhaps if they did not practice their magic in this manner, if their civilization were not set the way it is, the whole world would be awash with the perverting energies of chaos. It is food for thought, at least. But even so, the elves are not the greatest mages of the world. Whisper it, even in Altdorf, for the High Elves have spies here too. But I have discovered this in the dustiest tomes of the Great Library, and in the Library of the Great College. In the subtle allusions to ancient spellcasters, in obscure marginalia, in enigmatic metaphors laid down within allegories, in some of the fundamental works of magical theory, I have discovered hints that there is a greater magical race, ancient creatures that now live only in a corner of the globe, in the gods' forsaken jungles of Lustria. There, live mages, that in their magical light make the elves appear as though they are first-day, snot-nosed apprentices. According to my notes, the creatures of Lustria are so ancient and learned that they can cast world-shaping enchantments in their sleep. They could, in a dream, devastate an entire empire army. They are almost, may Sigmar forgive me, I did say almost, godlike in their power. So there is hope for human magic. If not only the elves can ascend the magical heights, if there is a power beyond elven comprehension, there can be a way to overturn that which Teclis gifted us. There may be methods and training which can free the College of Wizards from their bonds and bring us towards our potential. And it was my recommendation, I'm proud to say, that the Imperial expedition to Lustria left Altdorf last year. Moreover, across the whole world, there are other lands that boast magic units of all kinds. The courts of Ind and Cathay, I hear, employ wizards in a similar manner to the Imperial nobility. There is little contact between us, but perhaps one day they can join with the wizards of the Empire, and those of Estalia and Talea, and even Araby, to share and expand the secrets of human magic. Perhaps even the baser creatures have something to teach us, even greenskins. After all, if, as has been reported on many occasions, ignorant goblins can conjure devastating sorceries, then perhaps we can learn something from them on how to harness our own powers better. Even creatures of legend, merely glimpsed in stories, are said to wield some form of magic. One-eyed swamp monsters, six-legged forest reptiles, and many more of the world's weird and wonderful beings. And this is not to mention the perverted magic of chaos-tainted creatures, when I discuss in depth elsewhere. And actually, I found out who wrote that bit, because it talks about him in the other 3rd edition sort of magic supplement. It's 3rd edition roleplay, not... yeah, anyway. But yeah, so I know who spoke about that, and there's actually a great little excerpt about it, which will help tie everything in. sort of tie everything together at the end after we've spoken about all the laws. So that'll be quite fun, actually. It's a load of diary entries, essentially. It's cool. So yeah, you'll enjoy that. But I'm actually going to skip along to a different section. The colleges of Magick. So, the founding of the colleges. Based in Altdorf, the colleges of Magick are the 8 institutions which control magic use and wizardry in the Empire. They constitute the only legal method of wizardry in the Empire. Each college specialises in one of the winds of magic, and that wind shapes the nature of the college and the nature of the college's wizards. The colleges were formed in the days after Magnus the Pious defeated the Chaos Incursion of 2304, though the Imperial armies were steadfast and vital to Magnus the Pious's great victory. They were aided by elven mages sent from Ulthuan. The leader of these mages was Teclis. Teclis saw how the human spellcasters of the day were scrabbling around in their ignorance, inhibited by primitive superstitions, and he began to teach them a greater magic. The 8 colleges of magic were formed at a time of dire need, hurriedly, out of necessity, but they have developed into long-lasting institutions that dominate all magical research in the Empire. Over the 200 years or so of their existence, the colleges have grown in power and influence. Now they pull strings at virtually all levels of Imperial society. A number of nobles and all manner of institutions and organisations employ or consult members of the college orders. In a very short time, the colleges have come to rival all but the largest religious cults for influence in public life and the imperial court. Despite their power, the colleges are still largely unknown and mistrusted by the populace. The common citizen of the Empire may find wizards awe-inspiring in theory, but he rarely encounters one in the flesh, and might not be pleased to do so. The existence of magic is common knowledge, but at the same time it is still a thing of fantasy and wonder, and often only half-believed. Unlike the religious cults, which are seen to help the people and have a practical effect on everyday life, the colleges of magic, even in Altdorf, are seen as otherworldly and aloof. Beyond Altdorf, all sorts of superstitious nonsense is spouted and believed about them. Importantly, the colleges report directly to the Emperor. This gives them a certain amount of power to bypass the usual protocols and laws, and it makes them invaded by nobles and servants of imperial and provincial governments alike. This independence of action from the rest of the Empire's institutions, and this exemption from certain laws of the land, puts the colleges on par with the officially approved religious cults. In many matters, they are a law unto themselves. Many of the colleges are housed in grand, conspicuous buildings in Altdorf, or at least conspicuous to those with the gift of magical sight. To commoners, some of the college buildings are shrouded and obscured by magic, virtually invisible. Several are near the Imperial Palace, where their influence is strongly felt. The colleges are not just collections of wizened sages sitting around discussing arcane theory in dull tones. They are complex, resourceful institutions, supported by many staff, servants, and retainers, and they possess a network of colleagues and sympathisers spread throughout the Empire and the Old World. The colleges strive to present a united front to the world, and usually they work together to further their common interests. Sometimes, though, bitter rivalries break out onto the wider stage, and one college might actively attempt to curtail the influence of another. There also exists the inevitable infighting and petty feuds that develop in any institution wielding power and influence. Each college is ruled by a patriarch, an esteemed individual who has complete authority over the affairs of his college. Though all-powerful in theory, in practice the patriarch realises the importance of asking for and taking advice from the wizard lords of the college when prudent. The colleges are represented before the Emperor by the Supreme Patriarch, who ascends to the position by besting his predecessor in a harrowing contest of magical prowess fought in the Hall of Duels. The health of each college finances varies from order to order, but most colleges have many important patrons, including elector counts and, of course, the Emperor himself. Wealthy families pay to get a child into apprenticeship, but those who enter the college are from all walks of life. The nature of magic means that the colleges are, to an extent, meritocratic institutions. Inevitably, as they go about their business, wizards are not above making a profit from their activities, for themselves and their order. Any help that the college gives outsiders notoriously comes with a high price, or strings attached. Many colleges have long-standing relationships with some institutions, which suggest a bond beyond merely financial. The colleges have minor wizards' houses and towers throughout the Empire, as a means of spreading their influence, conducting experiments, and making observations, as well as to keep a keen eye on political and magical events. Some of these magical outposts are obvious to all, and are often miniature representations of college buildings in Altdorf, but some appear merely as conventional businesses and residences, unrecognisable to the untrained eye. The clues pointing to their real purpose are only available to those with special knowledge, or those who can detect the presence of magic. In the aftermath of the Great War against Chaos, Magnus the Pious worked incessantly to rebuild the Empire. To aid him, the High Elf mage Teclis proposed that he should organise the wizards who would serve so effectively against Chaos. Magnus trusted in Teclis' judgment, much to the chagrin of many of the Emperor's advisors, who were wary of giving the High Elves too much trust. Teclis believed that the human mind could safely control only a single wind of magic, because men were simply not as attuned to the winds as the High Elves, nor did they live as long. Under Teclis' guidance, historians credit Magnus with establishing the Colleges of Magic, with 8 distinct orders. Each order focused on the study and application of one of the 8 winds. Even the establishment of the colleges was controversial to the High Elves. Some sensed a frailty in mankind, believing that men might one day fight against the High Elves with that knowledge. That the knowledge Teclis was granting might eventually prove to be the Elves' undoing. Many High Elves were content for the humans to go back to being the magically inept people they had always been. Others supported Teclis' involvement. After all, Elves possessed direct access to mankind's newfound powers, so who better to influence and guide their development? The magical principles to which the colleges adhere were purportedly drawn up by Teclis himself, which is why some wizards refer to them as the Teclisian Laws of Magic, or simply as the Laws of Magic. These laws are the cornerstone of collegiate magic. Each order's patriarch keeps a copy of the tome. Over the years, however, the human wizards have built upon these fundamental principles, and college magic is much more sophisticated than it was 200 years ago. It continues to grow in power and purpose as human wizards constantly strive to unravel the many mysteries of the winds of magic. It is said the founding of the colleges in the midst of the Great War against Chaos is precedent that the colleges ultimately exist to defend the Empire. In the aftermath of the Great War, however, the colleges gradually gained increasing independence from the army. While there is still a strong link between the military and the colleges, it is not as direct as it used to be. Although most orders, particularly the fiery wizards of the Bright Order, are still heavily involved in the Emperor's campaigns and are invaluable battlefield assets. As the influence of the colleges grew, disputes with the cult of Sigmar became more common. For hundreds of years, the cult of Sigmar had fervently protected the Empire from foul magic. Many Sigmarites had trouble coming to terms with the idea of sanctioned wizards working on behalf of the Emperor, openly practicing magic for the defense of the realm. Even today, there is a friction between the more zealous followers of Sigmar and the college wizards. Despite this, many witch hunters find themselves having to work hand in hand with collegiate wizards to track down renegade wizards who have turned to dark magic and chaos. Today, the colleges look back upon the long and dedicated tradition of disciplined and loyal service, dedicated to keeping the people of the Empire safe. Despite this, many of the Empire's citizens do not, and probably never will, trust collegiate wizards. Superstitions concerning magic and its link to chaos, fueled by the Sigmarites and the witch hunters, will forever cast a shadow of fear. So, just to think out loud for a bit, because I've been reading through this stuff a lot, but so there's a big rift between sort of religion and magic, because obviously magic seems a bit mysterious, right? It's not the gods giving them that power. So, there's a big rift there. But there's also going to be a massive political divide, because the wizards, they're going to be able to get the ear of any elect accounts or anything like that, right? Any lords and nobles, because they're going to be able to grant them things, especially like gold wizards, right? They're going to be able to turn stuff into gold. And that's kind of huge. Even if it's only temporary, which it seems to be temporary, to be honest. Even Balthazar Gelt, I don't think, can turn stuff into gold forever. But if you've got some guests coming around with a lot of money, and, a lot of money to invest in your land or your ideas, then, yeah, why not have them come to your dining hall and all of your ornaments are gold, to show how successful a businessman you are. It's going to prompt people to invest in your ideas. So wizards are really powerful in that way. But then that is going to cause a lot of, suspicion around wizards if they can manipulate people like that. But I think it's really interesting. I think it's really cool. They have a lot of power, like politically, which I think is really cool because, people just think of, battle wizards, right? Especially if you play like Total War, you don't see any political stuff there. But of course, they're pulling a lot of strings because they're able to. So I think that's really cool. And also the fact that you go, the further from Altdorf you go, the more people are going to think you're some crazy, scary thing. But because those superstitions still hold, they're going to be too scared to do anything about it. So wizards are being able to go about as much as they want, because they're either going to be, sort of the nearer to their college they are, the more respected they're going to be, but the further they go out, the more terrified people are going to be of them. So I think that's a fun little balance. So it's pretty cool, you know. There's there's a lot of story, I think, sort of to be had from adventuring wizards and stuff, which is very cool. And also on that, just to reinforce the fact that there's this sort of divide between sort of the urban and rural sort of thought, is there's a cool thing here about female wizards, supposedly penned by Gavious Clug, a grey wizard, and it's about female wizards. So in the old days, we used to think that females did not have the discipline to be proper collegians, nor were they able to face the rigours of a military campaign, and so they were only rarely admitted to the college, and many witches were burned. But today, a more enlightened age, we increasingly realise that this is not the case. But because of the history and the general distrust of wizards in some places, the people are still less keen for their daughters to go to the college than their sons. And that is why today's collegians are more likely to be men, and untrained wizards more likely to be female. And the further you get from Altdorf, the more discrepancy there is. But I have been charged with the guidance and education of female apprentices and male apprentices alike. I have taught them the underlying techniques of shadow magic in my order. Through tedious repetition and judicious application of my boot, I have battered into their thick skulls the fundamentals of ritual and the tenets of theory. And the only difference I have ever perceived between them, man and woman, boy and girl, is that, to my mind, the female smells slightly less unpleasant. So I think that is really fun, and it's also quite telling of grey wizards. That's very much in sort of in character as a grey wizard there. The fact that, the female smells slightly less unpleasant. Not more pleasant, because grey wizards are all very insular, which we'll get to. But yeah, they don't really like people. So I think that's really interesting. But yeah, I think that's cool. But it shows there's a discrepancy, And it's the same with just wizards in general. The further away you get from Altdorf, the more those superstitions persist. And you might think that's a bit odd, because it's been 200 years, right? And, they kind of saved the Empire and everything. But the fact is, this is a medieval world. So news takes a long time to travel, and superstitions take a long time to wear off. To be forgotten, because education doesn't travel. New thought doesn't travel as well. It's not like you can just email someone and go, hey, check this out. You can't check Facebook and get the news. So these superstitions will persist for a very long time. So I think it's really cool that that's all been sort of taken into account in the writing of sort of Magick in Warhammer. So yeah, I think it's really good. I love that. There's a lot of detail, and not a lot of detail, but it leaves a lot for you to sort of for you to imagine how this stuff works, which I think is good. It just gives you enough information and broad enough to be able to have you sort of fill in the blanks. So yeah, so I enjoy that. So as you can tell, we're probably not actually going to be talking about the specific laws of magic in this episode, because there's a lot of just background general wizard stuff. But I think that is really important to understand how a wizard lives, any wizard. And also, just to sort of, continue the this sort of how people think about wizards generally. There's actually a section here in the Tome of Mysteries that is called Bigotry towards wizards. So I think that is a great way to end this episode. So even the most patriotic citizens of the Empire might balk at the thought of actually meeting a wizard. There are many reasons for this prejudice, and some of them are more justified than others. Wizards are all mad! This piece of bigotry is not necessarily true, but many wizards do behave with a degree of eccentricity. Most wizards live rather cloistered lives, spending their waking hours in study and contemplation, and this can lead them to be awkward in social situations. There is also evidence to suggest that working with a single wind of magic, as all collegiate wizards do, has some sort of psychological impact. For example, a great many wizards of the Bright Order are notable for being hot-tempered and impulsive. This would seem to be a common side effect of their art, but it affects some bright wizards to a lesser extent. Some are more level-headed individuals despite their practice of bright magic. Wizards put themselves under great strain when working their spells, and so do risk madness. However, it is far from a foregone conclusion that a wizard should be less sane than any other denizen of the Empire. Magic is dangerous! Even the most ardent supporters of magic have to admit that this is tautology. This is a tautology. After all, how could magic be employed as a weapon if it were safe? As a counterpoint, they assert that well-controlled spells are less dangerous than many experimental weapons deployed by the Imperial College of Engineers. Most critics of magic do not hold the same prejudices against technological progress, so this counterpoint tends to expose them as nothing more than hypocrites. Sigmar banned sorcery! True, though most advocates of magic point out that such an act was necessary at the time when humanity's greatest allies and mentors were the dwarves, who loathed magic by and large. Such advocates argue that magic was viewed with some unwarranted superstition as a result. Subsequent alliances with elves had brought the men of the Empire to a better understanding of magic. Whilst there was some resistance to the formation of the colleges from radical clerics during the Great War against Chaos, most members of the cult of Sigmar are not opposed to the teachings of magic. Indeed, some of the most likely to assert the role magic has played in keeping the Empire secure from invasion are Sigmarite priests. So it is nice to know that some Sigmarite priests, well actually the majority, think that it's totally fine that there are wizards as long as they're on our side. But anyway, all magic derives from chaos. This complaint is the hardest one for wizards to offer a rebuttal to. Wizards use the term ether to distinguish between the magical energies used to cast spells and those that give form to entities such as the undead spirits and demons. But they are thought by many scholars to be one and the same. When spellcasting goes badly wrong, it can lead to mutation or the manifestation of demonic creatures. Indeed, even the colleges of magic teach that learning the arts of spellcraft outside of their orders and traditions inevitably leads men to chaos and corruption. As a result of such controversies, a wizard can expect to be the centre of attention wherever he goes. Most of the common folk he meets will likely hold such prejudices to a degree, whether he is in the market square of a busy city or a hamlet populated by rustic folk. Fortunately, though, there are powerful sections of society who patronise wizards and protect their interests. Whilst wizards are feared by the common folk of the Empire, they usually have powerful contacts. Although rustic people may feel threatened by the presence of a wizard, they would very rarely act on their prejudices, not only for fear of the wizard's arcane powers, but also in order to escape retribution from the powerful supporters he may well have. The most obvious allies of any particular wizard are other members of his order. The colleges of magic are rather insular institutions that guard their secrets closely from the eyes of outsiders. However, a positive result from this cloistered privacy is that the masters and apprentices within each college tend to get to know one another well. Provided that an apprentice behaves according to the needs of his order, he will find that the colleges look after their own. Should a member of a particular order require assistance, his colleagues will offer it if they are able. The nobility of the Empire largely understand the benefits that the College of Magic brings to the Empire. Not only do nobles provide leadership to the military, and therefore owe the wizards a debt of gratitude for the help they provide on battlefields, but they also tend to have cosmopolitan pretensions. The nobility like to cultivate coteries of unusual and eccentric friends, and wizards certainly fulfill such criteria. Wizards also tend to get along better with elves than other folk from the Empire. Elven magic was instrumental in constructing the colleges of magic, and the elf mage Teclis personally instructed Verlans and the first wizards. In private, some wizards regard the patronage of the elves as rather condescending. After all, it was Teclis who deemed it necessary for human wizards to be denied instruction in the art of high magic practiced by elven mages. Instead, he taught human wizards to dedicate their lives to the study of only one of the 8 winds. Such disgruntled wizards have to keep very quiet about their misgivings, as the religious and political authorities of the Empire overwhelmingly agree with Teclis' findings about the limitations of human wizards. As evidence of their wisdom of Teclis' decision, they point to the many wizards who have studied the use of multiple winds of magic and who have subsequently fallen to the service of chaos. So guys, I think that sort of sums up, wizards in a general sense. So in the next episode, we will be speaking, we'll start going through the 8 orders, which include, what colour they are, what the order's called, even what their college is like, which is kind of cool. So we can get to know each order properly. But that gives you an introduction to wizards, on a whole. which I think is important to really understand, you know, each of the 8 winds of magic, each, you know, of the 8 colleges, because you know, it sort of informs what they're like, and you know, and how people react to them. So you know, I had to go through this first, otherwise you don't get the full picture, and I'm trying to give you the full picture. So if you enjoyed the full picture, feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. And guys, I will see you in the next video. Have a good day, guys.